So welcome everybody. Thanks for showing up and wanting to do the best you can in terms of submitting an abstract. I hope the skills that you learn here today you can use in any abstract process that you would write, adjusting it for whatever conference. I really hope you'll do that, and I really appreciate the time you're taking to do this right. We've all, perhaps you haven't all, but maybe you will in your careers, have this process where you are the one that's reviewing abstracts, and I can guarantee you, you really, really appreciate a well-thought-out, well-written, audience-serving abstract that absolutely lends to a good presentation. And we've all sat through lousy presentations, and it's probably highly likely the abstract wasn't that great or thought out either. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. All the good-looking people are here, so that's good. Before I go further here, I want to just state what the goals of the National Monitoring Council are. It was formed in 1997 to bring together diverse expertise that was needed to develop. Excuse me, there was a need at the time to really bring groups together to get out of our stovepipes, to develop a collaborative, comparable, and cost-effective approaches for literally monitoring and assessing our nation's water. Because that's almost 30 years ago. And we still need this effort ever more today, even more so with the threats on our waters, as well as dwindling resources and the ability to make this a priority. I want to mention that to the National Water Quality Monitoring Council, we use the word water quality, but water quality does mean all media, so lakes and reservoirs, streams and rivers, groundwater, estuaries, oceans, wetlands, it's all water media. And it also includes more than chemistry. It's physical habitat features and flow and things like that, as well as biological macroinvertebrates, algae, chlorophyll, fisheries, and things like that. So think about water quality, if you don't know that about us, that it means all those things. And one of the very first things the Council did was just create a minimum data element, the things that would be very, very important for all of us to be including with our data so that our data is usable over and over. Early on in the years of the Council's initiation, they created this framework here that you're looking at that really guides everything we do. And if you look on the outside of the wheel, you see the collaboration, you see the coordination, and you see the communication. And I believe there's been a lot done because of this Council's effort. If you look inside the wheel, you'll see the basic components of an effective study design or monitoring plan. And again, all the products and services, our conferences, everything tries to address one or more of these areas. You see there that developing monitoring objectives, the yellow area, encompasses asking your monitoring questions, but also gets at what are your targeted decision makers and what are their information needs, and thus what are your data quality objectives, what other data exists that you might leverage so you're not reproducing, what's your geographic scope, all kinds of things go into developing your monitoring objectives there. And then you move to the monitoring program where you're actually designing the what's, the whens, the where's, the how's, the data quality objectives, how you're going to manage your data, to answer those questions you just and fulfill those information needs that you just developed in the step before. Then you actually go out and collect the data, and then you're actually managing the raw data, which is a very different exercise than managing your data for actual information products. Then you get into actual assessment and conclusions and recommendations and interpreting the data, which I just said was a very different sort of effort than managing raw data. And then, of course, you get to the findings and did you answer your questions and your evaluation of your entire monitoring program and study design. So, again, everything we do is around this wheel for all of us collectively to better understand, protect, and restore our waters. So when you go to the Council's website, you see how our work groups and all our products and services are developed. They all sort of fit in that wheel. So some of the things that might be of interest to you in addition to the conference that we do is the Council is in charge of, overseen by the USGS and EPA, the National Water Quality Portal, which is where everybody should be putting their data to have it published, open access, and discoverable. And I'm sure there'll be many sessions at the conference around the portal. Another very old and important product we do is the National Environmental Methods Index, called NMC for short. Attached to all of that are all this information. If you are doing real live monitoring and using sensors, it's a fairly new technology, and there's a lot to know about how to actually implement sensor management, but also to deal with the data that comes from it. You should know as well that volunteers, anyone can add methods to this NMC database, that you add a method and it goes on to do the data quality and a lot of the decisions that might be made with that method. So it's actually not very full of a lot of volunteer monitoring or perhaps less rigorous methods, but we're all invited to put our methods in there. We also have 2 national monitoring networks, a reference watershed and a national monitoring network that's trying to get, you can go onto the website and learn more about each of those national monitoring networks. They're, again, coordinating and collaborating. You're going to learn more about our conference that we host every 2 years, loosely, whatever Washington will let us do. We also publish quarterly or biannual newsletters. Again, you can contribute to that. We love articles from the world out there. And we host webinars like this on a wide range of topics, very wide range of topics. So you can get on an email list and learn the upcoming webinars. There's a page on the National Monitoring Council's website that's dedicated to volunteer monitoring or citizen science. And on there you'll find a map that Dr. Chris Stepanek in her work, she updates once a year at least, shows where all the volunteer groups are around the country as well as service providers to those groups. So you want to know if you're up there and you're not up there, you can go there and see and fill out a form. It helps this whole other monitoring community see how active and how important our efforts are in contributing to the nation's collective knowledge and water-based and actions and decisions in protecting our waters. There's also a lot of resources. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel on this site, but we link you to a lot of other existing sources. There's dozens and dozens of FAQ sheets out there on how to manage your volunteers, recruitment, retention, do quality assurance plans. You name it, there's a FAQ or some resources up there from many, many different groups around the country. And then finally, one of the things we're trying to do much better at as a volunteer community, which we're not very good at, is telling and sharing our success stories. I'm guessing that every single group on this call right now has at least a dozen success stories. If you've existed for more than 5 years or even a year, that's a success story. If you've done any monitoring at all and made a decision or action from that monitoring, that's a success story. And we don't do a very good job of sharing that. So there's a format, a form you can fill out for different categories of your work and begin to help sharing those stories. And then Julie mentioned earlier that we had focused work groups. Volunteer monitoring was added as one of 4 or 5 work groups where we meet to try to produce valuable resources to the community like this webinar. So there's a lot on that council's website. All right, Julie.
All right, Barb.
And then focusing on the actual upcoming conference, I want to mention and reiterate that the council is so supportive of volunteer monitoring work that for all the years we've hosted a conference, we've actually tried to treat volunteer monitoring and citizen science data as equal to all other data generating entities. And as such, we do a really hard job, we work really hard to integrate volunteer monitoring topics into all the sessions. So every year we often get a complaint that there wasn't enough volunteer monitoring alone sessions. So know that we're working hard to integrate those sessions into, and that's what's going to help when you write your abstract, because it is equal to it. It's not a voluntary monitoring conference alone, it's a monitoring conference collectively. That said, there will be, and there are some desired sessions to single out, that audience of volunteer monitoring and citizen science. So don't be afraid to write your abstract purposefully one way or the other. Some of the specific things we have available targeted to the community at the conference is we will have a volunteer monitoring booth where you can come and ask questions and see some things and have handouts, and it's a great place to gather at the conference. And that's usually thanks to EPA, who pays for that booth for us, so we hope that continues. Usually in the middle of the week, we will have a dedicated meeting after all the sessions. It's usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday. That is a special meeting just for volunteer monitoring, an hour and a half or so. We'll design an agenda that's based on what we think will meet most needs. We can network there. And then we usually carry on and go into dinner that evening. That's happened at every single meeting, and that will continue. And then, of course, in the different format sessions that Mary is going to explain later, there's all kinds of opportunities to network with each other and amongst and across other disciplines and different kinds of entities. It's a fabulous conference. I mean, I think it's like flunking PE. You have to really try to flunk PE when you're growing up. If you didn't walk away from this conference with something about your program or more than one thing and met a few people to continue a relationship with, you probably were out ditching and didn't attend anything. So just know that there's a lot of integrated sessions and a lot of focused on our network at the conference. All right, I think that's my time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barb. And a reminder, if you have questions, please write them into the chat function and direct it to all presenters. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mary Skopik, who is the Executive Director of the Iowa Lakeside Laboratory Regent Resource Center. She was formerly a senior scientist at the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, where she coordinated the beach monitoring, stream monitoring, and citizen monitoring, or IOWater, programs. Mary is also a member of the Council and the National Advisory Committee on Water. And she has earned her degrees in geography from the University of Iowa and completed her PhD in environmental science also at the University of Iowa. Mary, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Julie. Barb did a wonderful job of talking about what the Council is, and I'll just refer to it as the Council. It's a lot easier. The Council, again, provides a national forum for the wheel aspects that Barb talked about in terms of collaboration, coordination, and communication. So the conference is really the opportunity to get together with your colleagues and collaborate on ideas and maybe, again, communicate something that you've learned that would be of value to other people, and then, again, to coordinate your efforts within a region, within the state. And so the Council is really hoping that the conference provides that function. Go ahead, Julie. So the conference is the 11th National Water Monitoring Conference, and it is March 25th through the 29th of 2019, and it will be in Denver, Colorado, which is a great place for everyone to get to. It's not hard to get to. And the goals of the conference are really, again, to bring your ideas and the things that you've learned in your programs. As Barb said, everyone's got a success story, to bring those ideas forward and exchange information. And to build that community and that network of practitioners, the things that are working well for you, insights that you've gleaned over your years of doing water monitoring, and to be able to share that with other people in a way that inspires them and gives them good ideas and allows us to achieve that goal of the Council, which is to not be duplicating efforts, but to really work together in ways that lift all of us forward. So the URL is there for the conference, and there's a lot of great information, and Peggy will be talking about that. But as Barb, I think, did a great job, be inspired by your colleagues and people at the conference. Take advantage of all the different opportunities that are there. Next. So in order to manage the beast, which is this very large conference over several days, we try to organize the conference into themes. And you can think about these themes as being a series of concurrent sessions that will be running during the conference. So we'll have an opening plenary presentation, but then we'll have these conference themes that you can weave back and forth throughout the days. And we try to put these in themes that give us some sort of consistency and coherence to the overall conference. So things like looking at water quality prediction, looking at emerging risks, looking at, Barb mentioned, monitoring across the hydrologic cycle, so groundwater, wetlands, precipitation, anything that allows us to think about monitoring over those different kinds of water resources. We really like to hear about tools that are helping us to mine the data that's out there and to visualize that water quality data. We're looking for things that help us to think about biological integrity. So what are you doing to understand water quality from a biological perspective? Certainly we want to know about effective monitoring collaborations and partnerships, because again, that's part of that wheel in terms of collaboration. So if you've got a great idea of how you've worked either with other volunteer monitoring groups or with the feds or with the states, that would be of value to anybody else who's out there struggling perhaps to get their state partners to really listen to them. We want to know how we're maybe informing management action. So what's being done to be effective at managing that, and to perhaps inform on restoration activities. And then lastly, trying to look at human health a bit as well as ecosystem health. Human health has been a little bit shy in terms of the conference, but we know that water quality is integral to human health. And so if you've been working on that at all, we'd love to hear about that. So nowhere in those conference themes does it say volunteer monitoring or citizen science. And I think, again, as Barb indicated, our goal is really to have your sessions, your presentations to be integrated within these themes. So you may want to think about, where does my work fit? Is it looking at emerging risks? Is it looking at informing management activities? How do I embed my work in one of these themes and not really just focus on that you're volunteer monitoring or citizen science? We really want to have you working within these different themes. So think about how your work aligns with that as you're writing your abstract. The presentation formats that we have, there's the two main presentation formats. First of all, we have oral 15-minute presentations, and 15 minutes is not a lot of time. So again, and Peggy will talk more about this, you want to be succinct with the story that you want to tell. In addition to the oral 15-minute presentations, we have poster presentations, and we have an awful lot of overflow. Folks that want to give a presentation but can't fit into an oral session may move in or may choose to use a poster. Which is, again, a really great way to share your story with folks and have a longer conversation standing around a poster board. So don't shy away from thinking about giving a poster presentation if you aren't really that interested in doing an oral presentation. When you go to submit your abstracts, there's something called a champion session. Those would be somebody who wanted to put 4 presentations together in a session. So unless you have proposed a champion session or asked to be part of a champion session, you can kind of ignore that part of the submittal process. You may be interested in, though, that we have extended sessions, and these are meant to be a little bit more interactive as opposed to 4 presentations that cover that time slot. They may be a panel discussion, and so there may be a number of presenters who are giving a few remarks, but then having an open discussion with the people sitting in the room. We may have things like workshops, and volunteer monitoring has definitely supported a lot of volunteer monitoring focused workshops, how you do bacteria monitoring or how you motivate your citizens. Lots of great workshops coming out of the volunteer monitoring community, and again, they tend to be either 90 minutes or a couple of 90-minute extended sessions. And then we also have, within that extended session format, facilitated roundtables. So maybe, there's a group that wants to talk about data management, and they just want to get folks together and talk about how we're managing data in a way that is a real robust discussion and doesn't really fit in a oral presentation manner. We want to really highlight as well, and Barb mentioned this, there are a number of other opportunities for you to take advantage of. One is there's generally at least one time where we have dedicated networking time, and we may do that either by regions or by some sort of water resource or some sort of organizing principle. But we want to get you together with your colleagues to talk about common issues, and it's a dedicated networking session. As Barb indicated, you know, you could go hang out in the mountains instead of going to that networking session, but I think you really miss out on those really fabulous conversations that happen. And I think almost every person who's come to the conference really enjoys that networking session that we do. So certainly take advantage of that. And then also, we really work hard to come up with good field trips. As a water monitoring community, we like being outside, I think, and we like being in the field. And these are great opportunities to see what other people are doing with field work. And so feel free to take advantage of those field trips. Generally, we try to embed some of those during the week so that they're not only on the tail ends, but give you an opportunity to maybe get out of the conference facility during the week as well.
Awesome. Mary, you have about 1 more minute.
And this is it. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So, sorry. Abstract submission is August 15th, and there's a link to the instructions there. Go ahead. And then just quickly on the review process, you're going to select a theme when you submit your abstract. Those abstracts are then given to theme review teams. Now, we get anywhere from 600 to 900 abstracts, and so you really want to use keywords because we do have an automated process that lumps those abstracts within keywords. And so think about using those theme keywords to help us figure out where you belong. If you don't belong in the theme that you've self-identified, you may be moved. Once that happens, the theme looks at all those abstracts. We have about 5 or 6 different teams that are looking at that. We're going to outright reject anything that's selling a product. We're going to look at the quality of those abstracts, and then we start to put together sessions that are cohesive and complement one another. So trying to find a story within those 4 presentations. We try to place all the good abstracts. Sometimes we can't, and we may have to ask you to be a poster presentation, but again, that's okay. And then we'll notify the presenters of acceptance, and we'll have this great conference. We hope to notify you in early January, but sometimes we get a little delayed, and we're hoping by January 15th you'll get that acceptance into the conference. Some people may be requested to be alternates because we do unfortunately have people have to drop out sometimes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peggy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. And again, if y'all have questions, please write them using the chat function and direct it to all presenters. Next, Peggy Compton will discuss successful abstract writing ingredients. Peggy has been a natural resources educator with the University of Wisconsin Extension for 20 years. During that time, she has authored and co-authored dozens of fact sheets, articles, and newsletters, and has come to be recognized by her colleagues as a tough editor with a large red pen. She is currently the baseline monitoring and outreach coordinator for Water Action's Volunteers Wisconsin Citizen Stream Monitoring Program. She also serves on the Professional Development Committee of one of the Extension's national associations, Epsilon Sigma Phi. Take it away, Peggy.
Thank you very much, and thanks to Barb and Mary also for giving such great background information on the council as well as the upcoming conference. What I'm going to share with you over the next 25 or 30 minutes or so, hopefully 25-ish, is several things that will be specific to the National Monitoring Conference and the abstract writing and submitting process for this conference. But as Barb mentioned early on, there'll also be some takeaways from the webinar, and that will cut across any good writing that you want to do in any abstract that you might want to submit to another conference as well. So first of all, something to think about, if you just want to back up one more, when you are first hearing about a conference and thinking that you might want to submit an abstract for a presentation at that conference, go to the conference website and look at the audience. It's usually fairly easy to find when there's a description of the conference. So in this case, for the National Monitoring Conference, right there in the first couple sentences, you can find that the audience who is expected and who is hoped to attend the conference are water stakeholders, water professionals from nonprofits, academia, volunteer citizen scientists. So start thinking about it that way. that will your project or your program that you would like to share, that you will be talking about in your abstract, would it apply to a broad cross-section of the conference attendees, knowing that that's the audience that is hoped to be coming to the conference? Is there some part of that noted audience that your project would really resonate with? And that goes hand in hand with the second bullet, which is those conference themes that Mary just got done outlining for you. Is your volunteer monitoring in association with something in those conference themes? It's probably unlikely that you couldn't fit some part of your project or program under one of those 9 designated themes: data, technology, collaboration, and partnerships. There's so much included if you read those 9 themes. But in the unlikely event that it doesn't really seem to fit, you certainly could use the other option. So when I get into the submission process, you will see that there's actually a place that if you really don't feel like your project fits into any of those 9, you can choose other. And just one more thing on this slide, Mary also mentioned about in the monitoring conference, just like many conferences, there are lots of avenues for being involved and being a presenter: posters, oral presentations, longer sessions. And when I suggest that when you hear about or read about all those possible options, instead of thinking about, like, what do I really love to do? Do I really love to talk to people? Do I really not like to stand in front of people and give oral presentations? But really think about the content that you want to share. And what is the best avenue, the best way to describe or convey your project? What would give your project like really the best, put its best face forward? For instance, is it best to have conversations with individuals or small groups? And can you capture the essence of your project in photos and graphs and things that are very visual? Then it might be just perfect for a poster, compared to something that can easily be described and summarized in just 15 minutes, which, as Mary pointed out, is not a lot of time. So really think about your project and what you might want to tell people about, and what's the best avenue out of all those possible ways of being involved in the conference. Your next step then will actually be, getting started and determining, again, out of your body of work, what is it that you do, your projects, your programs, what would you, most likely want to contribute to the conference? You know it's a great conference, you want to attend, and for many of us, funding to attend conferences is pretty limited, but it gets easier to make a case for attending a national conference if you are going to be a presenter at that conference. I know that's true for me. I bet it's true for many people on the line as well. So just by sitting in on this webinar and knowing about conference themes and some of the fine details of how to really make sure that your abstract is put together well and is submitted properly, that could make the difference between your abstract getting accepted for presentation. You have 600 to 900 potential abstracts. That's a lot. You want yours to rise to the top. And how do you do that? Well, as I mentioned, the themes are really important, but then when you're looking at all the things that you could possibly tell people about, think about what is your completed work, not something that's maybe just an idea. If it's only an idea or a discussion item, then it's probably not for the oral or poster presentation, but maybe one of those other types of sessions that Mary mentioned. So the abstract process that I'm going to talk about really is more for those oral and poster presentations. So you're looking for work that is completed, something that's innovative, cutting edge, and really the learners, the attendees of the session at the conference, are they stimulated to adopt a new practice, or does it contribute, would hearing your presentation contribute to their knowledge base? Would they go back home with some good ideas, things that they could implement or try? and that would be the the best project that you could put forward would have some of those attributes. And then once you've decided what project or program out of the work that you do would really fit that bill and is going to be something of interest, fit the theme of the conference, then you need to sit down and really start thinking about the abstract and crafting that abstract. Always keep in mind what the purpose is. What is the purpose of the abstract? Yes, we always think about, I have to write this abstract so that I can hopefully get it accepted and I can make a presentation at the conference, whether it be oral or poster. But when we're writing that, almost always now, it is submitted and it's not retyped by somebody else to go into the conference program. It will go in verbatim exactly as you typed it, exactly as you submitted it. So make sure that you have everything in order, not just for it to be accepted for presentation at the conference, but so that it is ready to go in the conference program, whether that be virtual, online, or if it be a written program. And always there's word limits for abstracts. It's fairly short. In this case, it's 350 words for the National Monitoring Conference. But it is a short number of words, so make it good. Put in important things, and remember that it also has to tie back to what you're actually going to present at the conference. It's just not about making it sound so good that you get the abstract accepted, but that it's also very representative of what you want to tell people about. What are the highlights of the project or program that you want to talk about? Some specifics on writing your abstract. Of course, there will be the title and there will be the body of the abstract. I chuckled just a little bit in the monitoring conference instructions, the abstract submittal instructions, that it has a 50-word limit for the title, which maybe that is somewhat of a typo, I'm not sure, but 50 words is a lot. The several sources would suggest that a title be maybe 12 words long, 12 to 16. And so definitely, just because it says your title can be up to 50 words, don't think it needs to be that long. That would be, way too many words. So, but that title, no matter how many words you use, is going to be so important, not just when people are reviewing these abstracts, and they may have dozens and dozens to review, the title is the first thing they're going to read, and it needs to really be clear and concise and interesting to those reviewers. But it also, there may be some rules that is particular to this conference or this abstract. And in this case, there is a specific style guideline that is noted in the abstract instructions that says your title should be written in title case. And what that means is, as you can see my example abstract title there, title case is as compared to sentence case. Sentence case where the first word of a sentence, and then after that the first word is capitalized, and after that only proper nouns are capitalized. But in title case, all of the major words in the title would be capitalized, as you can see in the example there. So, that's a little nuance. It's probably not going to make a huge difference if your abstract is wildly great otherwise, and you didn't follow title case in writing the title, but still, it's going to be printed in the program, and don't you want yours to, follow the rules and look professional and like everyone else's when it's in the printed program? So, little nuance there, something specific that they're asking for this conference. Then just looking at that example, Julie, if you want to go back, there you go. On that example title, this actually was a title of a abstract that I submitted, and it's the positive piece of it is that it really, the the session was about evaluation, and it was about an evaluation that I did in my program, Water Action Volunteers, and how we used the results of that evaluation. And the session really was mostly about evaluation. It was submitted for a National Extension Conference, and that's where I presented it. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the quick perusal for the actual attending the conference and attending my presentation, I didn't have very many people attend. And they saw this and thought, volunteer monitoring, I don't do anything in monitoring, that's not really of interest to me. And so while this title actually was not terrible, it did not take into account the audience for the conference well enough. So it was good enough that I got the abstract submitted, but it wasn't really great to carry through and attract attendees to come to my session. And if I had it to do over again, I would probably have just written the title, Using Evaluation to Improve Your Extension Programs. Then all my extension colleagues, who were pretty much all interested in improving our educational programs, they would have known that that was really the gist of it, instead of seeing some words like volunteer stream monitoring, and that didn't really resonate with them. So another reason to not take your title of your abstract lightly. Next, looking at that information then, once you have your title. These are the types of things that you want to think about when you're crafting the body of your abstract. Think about it like you're telling a story, several well-written paragraphs. The first paragraph might talk about, or should talk about, what is your program or your project that you're going to describe. 2 or 3 sentences of background, because we might not know anything at all about it. So what is it that you're going to tell us about at the conference if your abstract gets accepted? What did you do? A little bit of background. What did you learn? And then, what are the take-home messages for the audience that would be listening to your presentation at the conference? It's okay to spell this out. Don't leave the reviewers and later on the conference attendees guessing at the value of your presentation. Spell it out. What are you going to learn? What are going to be the takeaways that you're going to get from my presentation? And after I do the crafting of the body of my abstract and I have a draft, sometimes I go back and I review the title and make sure that it's really descriptive of what the content is that I put in the abstract. On this slide, you see about half of an abstract that I submitted a couple years ago for a state extension conference. I cut out some of the background information that was in the first paragraph, but in a nutshell, I think the positives, the good parts of this abstract is that I knew my audience was extension professionals in Wisconsin, and that I wanted them to know about my program, but I also wanted them to think about how I could be working with them and they could be working with me. Basically, how my statewide program could enrich their county and regional education and outreach programs. So I tried to put in some things that would bring that out. So, how some words there, I tried to put in, that this was not only could this be synergistic with the programming that you're already doing. I put in that the volunteers that I train are active in their local communities. Well, extension agents love that. So overall, I think also, it was a well-written abstract, and I just pointed out what the session would include. That may sound boring when you go back and reread your abstract, but that leaves the reviewers knowing exactly what you would present, and it makes it very easy as a reviewer. So it's clear what I'm going to be covering and my takeaway messages. And certainly before submitting, after you've drafted your abstract, if you haven't already read in great detail the abstract instructions, do that. In this case, for the monitoring conference, there is a PDF available on the website, and you can find it there. And you can really pick out some nuances, as I was saying earlier. For instance, when you go to the website listed there and you see this PDF, you'll find that, of course, the submission deadline, it's up at the top in red, so you're going to adhere to that, have it submitted on online in time. You know, now with online submission processes, you really have to adhere to that deadline because oftentimes at midnight local time, the abstract submission window closes and you can't, you know, sneak it in later in any way. So you really have to be paying attention to that. Again, it was in this instructions that I saw that the title should be written in title case, that style that they wanted. You'll also see some nuances here on the champion sessions that Mary mentioned. So 4 that would be linked together, similar content, and there's a champion, somebody that pulled together those 4 sessions. Well, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't read these instructions. I wouldn't have known that if you are part of a champion session, that you should choose other in the theme drop-down menu, and in the other box where it says describe, you would actually include the title of that champion session. So that's how they get put together. Basically, there's also, you know, a little thing like where you enter your keywords. It says here in the instructions, place a comma between your keywords, not a semicolon, but a comma. That's going to make your submission come through to the reviewers in the right manner. Words aren't going to be run together, things like that. So pay attention to if instructions are laid out like it is here in a PDF, you know, pay attention to it. That's going to give your abstract an edge. Remember, hundreds of abstracts are going to be submitted. So things that are easy for the reviewers to read are definitely going to stand out. Well written, adhering to these guidelines, taking into account the instructions. Something that I've taken to doing the last few times I've submitted an abstract is to actually go to the online process. So for the National Monitoring Conference, there are lots of links that are in this presentation. There's the link to the conference in general, to the call for abstracts, to that instruction PDF, and there's also an actual URL for the submission of your abstract. And in this case, this is the submission for the posters and oral sessions. There is a different link for submissions for those other sessions like the panel discussions and roundtables. So what I will do oftentimes, it just takes a few minutes, I will click on, even though it's 2 weeks away before I need to submit my abstract, I'll click on this link and I will look through the pages that are part of this abstract submission and see the actual boxes that I'm going to have to fill in. Those who know me well know that I do a lot of my really important work and a lot of my writing late at night. I'm just a night owl person. So I might be online making my actual submission at midnight. And at that time, not the night before, hopefully, a few nights before, but at that time, I can't check in with my co-presenters or my co-authors to find out some of these little pieces of information that I might need. So I go in and I actually see specifically what are the boxes that I'm going to have to fill in so that if I'm doing it at midnight when I don't want to be calling other people, what do I need to know? So you do have to put something in. It won't let you advance from one page to the next. So I just went in and I put my name, my first name and my last name and my email address so that I could get to the next page and I could see on the next page, I'm going to be asked to fill in the abstract title and the keywords. And a really interesting thing then, I'm going to be asked, you know, the abstract subject. Well, that's a drop down for those 9 themes that Mary mentioned in some detail. And then there are some other questions there that I might want to think about them ahead of time. So I go through this and I note these things on a piece of paper or I cut and paste right from that submission website. I don't submit it that night, but I go back and I know exactly the information I need on the night that I do submit it. And the really interesting thing here is that unlike a lot of other conferences where there is a box that I'm going to cut and paste my abstract into, here you put the file name of your abstract and then you get a link at the next screen to upload your abstract. You're not actually cutting and pasting. It's a little nuanced, but I might prepare differently. And always those abstract maximum word lengths are super important, because especially again in the online submission process, you know, if it says 350 words, you may have your last sentence cut off if you are 360 words. So be really particular about that.
Peggy, you have 1 more minute.
Okay. So in summary, I just want to point out some key ingredients for success, and I think this definitely goes for any abstract, not just the monitoring conference. Think about telling your project, sharing your project or program like you're telling a story, with the beginning, you know, why did you do it? What did you do? What did you learn? And what are others going to learn? You definitely want to look at those themes and the audience of the conference, adhere to the guidelines, keep the language simple and understandable, avoid acronyms and jargon, and omit redundancy because you want to have it, you know, less than 350 words. And then, of course, proofread, 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 and then give it to somebody else, because you will miss something. Even the best of us editors will miss something. So have someone else take a look at it. And then what are the things that you want to avoid? Don't try to make your abstract about marketing or advertising. And we already mentioned complete projects are going to be the best things to share via oral or poster presentations. And one here is something that I haven't hit on yet, is that idea that you have one abstract that you just try to recycle without a whole lot of changes and make it fit for various conferences. Although you may be sharing the same project or program, and writing those abstracts, make sure that you take that abstract, even if you did write it for something else, and really match it up to this conference guidelines, to the instructions, to the themes, etc. And lastly, a couple helpful resources that I really like a lot: the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and then our own writing center here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So you'll have those links when you have this presentation. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Throwing it back to Julie. And I know you have one more slide as well, Julie, but throwing it back to you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Barb, Mary, and Peggy for presenting. And again, folks, if you have any questions about the conference or questions about writing an effective abstract, please use the chat function and direct it to all panelists.